Some of you still have questions about diagramming and identifying sentence patterns, so I wanted to go over this week's exercises with you to hopefully answer your questions and clarify some confusion that may still be there. If you are struggling with diagramming, one of the best ways to start is to identify the parts of a sentence. I do this by identifying first the main parts. I put a box around the subject, and then divide the subject from the verb, the subject from the predicate. I double underline the verb, and then I identify any prepositions by circling them, and then underline the following prepositional phrases. Those are your main elements. Everything else is kind of secondary, and you can figure out where those things fit in. If you are struggling with diagramming, a good way to start is by parsing the sentence or identifying what part of speech every single word in the sentence is. And then you can more easily determine where they go in the diagram. So I've parsed all of these sentences, and you go through and look at them and see if you have any questions about that one. But moving on to diagramming, the first thing you put in your diagram is your noun or your subject. And then on the other side of the line from that goes the verb. In this case, it's an action verb, sits, followed by two prepositional phrases. So there's no direct or indirect object, so we know that this is an intransitive verb. The possessive pronoun that modifies cat goes here. Watch out for the sometimes. This can be confusing if the word answers the question how, when, or where. It's an adverb, not an adjective. In this case, sometimes answers the question when. So it's an adverb, and it goes below the verb. It answers the question when the cat sits, and then the answer is sometimes. So it goes on the diagonal below the verb. The prepositional phrases also qualify the verb. The cat sits where, on the treehouse, their treehouse, and for how long? For a whole day. So they also go underneath the verb line. Nouns always go on the horizontal. So just remember we have noun here, noun, and they're all horizontal. Some of you put tree underneath house, which is fine. You could consider that an adjective, or as here you can consider that part of the entire noun, that it is a tree house, one entity. Once we have this, it's easy to say we have a subject and an intransitive verb. So we can go to our cheat sheet and see that we have subject, intransitive verb, and so that we know it is sentence pattern number 6. Number 2, our noun is water, followed by two prepositions in and of and their phrases. The line dividing subject from verb. We have a be verb and then an adjective. So our subject goes on the line. Our prepositional phrases are modifying water, telling us about the water. So we have in the middle, and then of the river modifies middle. It's not water of the river, but it's the middle of the river. So that is dependent upon this first prepositional phrase and goes below. We then have our be verb with a backslash and an adjective following here. This is the subjective complement. This adjective can refer directly back to the subject. It's describing that the water is swift. The adverb would be swiftly, and you'd have to say the water was moving swiftly, modifying the verb, but here it's an adjective. So we have a subject, be verb, and an adjective. If we go here, we know that we have a subject, be, and the adjective. One thing I want to point out quickly while we're here is that a lot of you have questions about pedestals. Pedestals can only be used when the adjective is at the end in the predicate. So that means pedestals can only be used with sentence patterns 2, 4, and 9. So if you have a pedestal in one of the other sentences, you know automatically it doesn't belong there. Enough on pedestals. Let's go back to our exercises. Number 3, subject is hands. We have the linking verb smell. Any verb of sense is going to be a linking verb. And then we have the adjective terrible, followed by a prepositional phrase. We have compound preposition here, because of. is functioning as one unit, so it's going to go on one line, and then the phrase follows. So we have our subject hands with the possessive, our linking verb is smell, and then the adjective is terrible with the preposition below it. So if we look here, we have subject, linking verb, adjective. We go back to our sheet, and we see subject, linking verb, adjective, so that puts it as sentence pattern number 4. Next, with further practice, Janet will become an excellent cellist. Janet is the subject. Don't assume that the first noun of the sentence is the subject. Make sure we know what's doing the action. Will become is the verb. Verbs can be 1 word, 2 words, 3 words, depending on the tense and if there are helping verbs involved. So don't assume that you've underlined 1 word as a verb and that you're done. This sentence ends with a noun. And so we know that that's there. Oh, and by the way, our main verb here is the linking verb. So we have our subject, Janet, the verb will become, and then our noun at the end. This prepositional phrase at the beginning is functioning as an adverb. It's describing how Janet will become. She'll become a cellist with further practice is how she's going to do it. Since that is an adverb, it goes underneath the verb section of the diagram. Don't assume that just because it's closest to the noun that it's going to go underneath the noun. Cellist refers directly back to Janet, so that is a subjective complement, the noun that's functioning there. So we have subject, linking verb, and noun, which makes that category 5. Next, we have objects coming into play. Building is obviously the noun here. Makes is the verb, an active action verb. Now the question to determine the direct object is what is receiving the action of the verb? What is being made here? The building makes who? Our landlord. So landlord is the direct object separated by a vertical line. And then we have another noun at the end of the sentence, which is qualifying, describing landlord. So we have man referring back to landlord, an objective complement. And then we have our associated modifiers down here. So we have subject, transitive verb, direct object, and objective complement or predicate noun. That puts us in sentence 10. With that same pattern that we just saw in that sentence. Next, this one, remember that Uncle Ira is the entire subject. Just like President Obama or the King of England, it's a title, so the entire thing is considered the subject. The verb, the action verb, is built. This one can be tricky just because of the order of things. So remember, to determine the direct object, ask which noun is receiving the action of the verb. Don't assume that it's the noun closest to the verb. In this case, Uncle Ira is building a tree house. He's not building children. So the direct object for this sentence is tree house, and he's building it for the children. Often indirect objects have an implied preposition. It's not written in, but you could put it in. Sometimes it helps me to reorder the sentence just to clarify things. So you could say this as Uncle Ira built a tree house for the children, and then it makes it more clear as to which is the direct and indirect object. Subject, transitive verb, direct object with an indirect object below, puts us as sentence pattern number 8. This next one is relatively simple. The thing that complicates here is we have a phrasal verb. So Jeff is our subject. Reeled in is the verb. A phrasal verb has the verb plus a preposition acting as one unit to convey the meaning that we need. Phrasal verbs can be confusing. There's kind of some nuanced distinctions that go on there. If you need to review that, it's on page 81 of your text, and they do a good job of kind of explaining what's going on there. And then what is being reeled in is one. So that is receiving the action of the verb. It's the direct object. So here we have subject, transitive verb, and a direct object. And if we go back to our sentence patterns, we see that that fits into sentence pattern 7. Number 8 is fairly straightforward. We have brother as a subject with the 2 modifiers there. We have a be verb with a noun at the end, referring back to my brother is a boy. There's the direct relationship, so that's the subjective complement with the modifiers below. So we have subject, be verb, and a noun at the end, which we can see is sentence pattern 3. Sometimes helps me to literally draw these arrows out just to see what's being referred to where and what's connecting, and then you're more likely to get things correct. 9, there's really not a lot going on in spite of all the words. We have the subject trout and a be verb, and then we have 2 prepositional phrases going on here, which is kind of similar to the river one we had. And we have at the bottom answering the question where, so it's an adverb, and then of the pool is referring to bottom, so you have 2 prepositional phrases kind of stacked on each other. So really we have subject and be verb with a whole bunch of stuff going on below that we're not really concerned about when we're trying to determine sentence pattern. So subject and be verb makes it sentence pattern number 1. Finally, we have caffeine as the subject, and then our action verb is keep. The question here is, we've got a noun. Is it direct or indirect? Is it receiving the action of the verb? Who is being kept? It's keeping people. So we know that that's the direct object separated by that vertical line. This sentence concludes with the adjective awake. And so we have subject, transitive verb, direct object, adjective. And if we look at our sentence pattern sheet, we see that that follows the pattern of number 9. I hope that this helps. We'll be getting a lot more practice over the course of the semester with sentence diagramming. So it will get easier. So hang in there, and I know you can do this.